Hello, sports history fans. I'm Harv Aronson from the Total Sports Recall podcast. You're about to jump into another thrilling sports history moment, but first let's dive into today's sponsor just in time for the holiday season. Introducing Art of Words, the brainchild of word artist Dan Duffy from Philadelphia. Dan meticulously crafts stunning images by handwriting relevant words from some of the greatest sports moments in time. These unique, budget-friendly illustrations are the perfect gift, sparking cherished memories and capturing hearts. Choose from city skylines, sports, history, and musicians to find a piece for everyone. And here's the exciting part. For that sports fanatic in your life, gift them a piece of their favorite team or player's history. Art of Words tells a compelling story. Explore collegiate stadiums, each meticulously crafted with every football victory etched in words. Or venture into baseball stadiums, handwritten with every player from the team's illustrious history. Don't wait. Order a print today for yourself and your loved ones this holiday season. Transform your wall into a gallery of captivating art and surprise your family and friends with a print of their own. Use code SHN15 at artofwords.com for a 15% discount on your order in November and December. Visit Art of Words, where words magically transform into stunning art, evoking cherished memories and touching the hearts of those you care about. Again, use the code SHN15 for a 15% off at artofwords.com.
Blog Talk Radio.
Tonight we'll go back in time to seasons past, when 22 men graced the rugged fields of yesterday, fighting for one more first down, one more yard gain, one final score that would bring victory after 60 minutes of battle on the gridiron. Tonight we'll explore the world of Gridiron Greats. Welcome to Gridiron Greats, football history and its memorabilia on the Gridiron Greats Publishing and Broadcasting Network. In conjunction with Swick Enterprises, and we're live from the Southport, North Carolina home of Gridiron Greats Magazine. I'm Bob Swick, publisher and editor of Gridiron Greats Magazine, and I'll be your host for the show. Gridiron Greats is the only publication in America that focuses upon the history and memorabilia of the North American football game since its inception in 1869. Cover 150-plus years of football history and memorabilia, and find us on the web at GridironGreatsMagazine.com. It is at this time I'd like to introduce my co-host. He's a senior contributing writer to Gridiron Greats Magazine, a football memorabilia historian, specializing in pre-World War II items, in particular Red Grange, and also Seattle Seahawk items, in particular Steve Largent. He hails from Portland, Oregon, Mr. Joe Squires. Joe, welcome to the show this evening.
Great to be back on, Bob. Great to be back on.
And we're back for another show, and I've been doing a little research, even though there's not much going on as far as auctions are concerned. REA just closed an auction, and I'm going to hand off to you and give us some feedback on what happened.
Yeah, you know me. I've talked about it. I love auctions. I love seeing the material come into the market, and football, good vintage football, is so hard to come by and pry out of us collectors' hands. So when a good auction comes up like RA, I'm always excited. Even their not their big one, whether their biannual one or quarterly. I think they do it now. And Brian Dwyer's been on the show, good friend. And that's tough. There wasn't much in the last REA, and I understand they got to take what's consigned to them, but I think I had two things I was bidding on. One of them was a BBC sealed box of 86 Topps football, and
I saw that.
The price, price got up there, and I'm just like, never mind. And it was just weird to not bid on anything. So I'm looking on Auction Report. You're familiar with Auction Report, right? They're kind of a summary of all auctions coming up. Yeah, auctionreport.com. And there's nothing on the horizon. It's like, I think there's a Leland's one, but it's mostly basketball focused now. And for the first time, it's like this, this Sahara desert of auctions. And I'm looking around and I'm like, man, what's going on? I need to scratch that collecting itch. So eBay, go ahead.
I was just going to say, I got a feeling with the National coming up in 6 weeks, that may be an influence to what's going on. I know Leland's later this summer. I could be wrong, but I'm pretty sure later this summer there's going to be an incredible piece from the New York Giants, and that's all I'm going to say about it right now. As we get closer and once they announce the auction, we're going to talk about it on the show. But I think it's just the National coming up, and dealers are holding stuff for the show. Things are dried up right now for whatever reason, and I find that hard to believe also.
Yeah, could be, because, think all the collectors we know, we're kind of buy and hold people. Not very often do I, get rid of stuff in my collection. We've all swerved and, verved and changed directions in what we collect. I guess stuff, sometimes does, but every 8-9 years, I kind of do a purge. But I was on eBay last night doing my, my normal Sunday night look through. I think most auctions come up, and Sunday, and they run for a week,
right.
Is what I've seen. And, and then I have my searches that, ping me during the week. But, I usually start off looking for Red Grange stuff. I got to live up to my namesake, in the Gridiron intro. There wasn't much. I go to buy it nows, and I go to auction. I want to say there were less than a dozen things that were running in the auction format for Red Grange.
Wow.
The lowest number I've ever seen. I switch over to Jim Thorpe. Same, less than 2 dozen items for auction. Switch over to Steve Largent. Not much new stuff. I start looking for, chickles and maroons and uncut sheets and unopened. It was a barren wasteland, a Mad Max, kind of asked for auctions, and it got me a little down, Bob.
Well, like I said, I think a lot of it is going to be National generated, and I think after the National, as some collectors possibly will go to the National and try to sell their wares or consign them to the auction houses, it'll be interesting to see. I'm looking forward to going back to Chicago. It's been several years. I think the last show in Chicago that I actually attended before the pandemic was in 2019. It was a pretty vibrant show, so it's going to be interesting to see what happens at this show. I'm bracing myself already for the Slab City, as I call it now, everywhere I look. And I'm also bracing myself to see how much vintage football will actually be shown there. It's going to be interesting to see if it's dried up, or it's going to be plentiful, or what happened to it. You know what I mean? So I think it's going to be. I just feel it's going to be a long 6 weeks, especially for guys like you who love auctions and enjoy bidding on them and the looking at what's on eBay and so on and so forth. So it's just going to be a different type of summer this year. Football is going to be pretty quiet, and maybe baseball will be more prevalent, or whatever the case might be. I don't know. I don't have a good read on it right now. I really don't. I don't.
I'll admit.
I really can't say it.
I've never really tracked how close to the Natty things start to dry up. But this seems, I mean, like you said, it's 6-7 weeks out. It seems a little early to stop listing stuff, I guess.
Yeah. Well, I get it in a way and I don't get it in a way. But then again, at some point, we may have reached a saturation point a couple of years ago during the height of the pandemic where a lot of stuff was just being, auctioned off here and there. But now, it could be, a real changeover happening. I don't know. I don't have it. Like I said, I really don't have a good handle on it one way or the other. What's going to be interesting in the upcoming issue of Gridiron Greats magazine, I restarted my Turning the Pages column that I had way back when in the early 90s for Sports Collectors Digest, because I really feel publications are way overlooked in our hobby today. And they're almost, the unwanted child, and they're, being tossed, given away, so on and so forth. And as we become a more electronic media-type society, where's all these publications going? And at the same time, we talked about this numerous times, where's all the stuff pre-World War II? There's not that much of it there because of, paper drives and all that kind of stuff and just, being destroyed over the years. To me, pre-World War II stuff and pre-1945 stuff should be going through the roof, if anything. So it'll be interesting to see what's going on. But I restarted the column to start to educate collectors again and new people in the hobby. Don't overlook publications. They're a great addition to your collection. And I really believe there's a lot of bargains in the market right now for old publications and actually newer publications, since most media guides are no longer being printed, programs aren't being printed, paper tickets are not being issued anymore. It's really a major changeover in the hobby. So I think there's going to be a lot of demand down the road for publications. That's just my, opinion on it. And whatever will happen, but we'll see what happens with that. You know what I mean? So
something you just mentioned made me raised a question with me. What publications does the captain, Bob Swick, subscribe to? What shows up in your mailbox? I'm curious because I only subscribe to Gridiron Greats.
I don't get anything anymore, to be honest with you. I get a couple of local North Carolina magazines here, and that's about it. There's no sports magazines to say anymore that one can subscribe to. I don't count Sports Illustrated anymore. They're a monthly publication, and it's just I can't stand reading it anymore. For football annuals, since I'm in the Southern Conference down here, SEC, I normally pick up the annual football publication of that, and if I see any other publications like that, I'll pick it up from the newsstand or from the store or whatever, and that's about it. But I don't subscribe to anything anymore, really. Sad to say. Oh, I take that back. I still get Wine Spectator, which is non-football related.
Yeah, maybe I should have qualified.
So I keep track of my. I have to clarify that. I still have to get my
Brenda than you probably. I love it.
Yeah, we fight over when it comes in to see who reads it first. No, but again, what is out there that you can really subscribe to? I mean, I don't get Beckett anymore. I probably pick up a Beckett football and a Beckett vintage at the show at the National, which is what I did last year. And I stopped buying the big Beckett book because two reasons. I can't see the print anymore. And I'm not going to buy a book and have to use a magnifying glass to try find information anymore on it. Forget it. I'm done with that. So, and I noticed, I use one example, 1961 Topps, 1960 Topps metallic set. They have never changed the price of that set since the early 90s. And I find that kind of hard to believe. Okay? So it's stuff like that they're more concerned with the new stuff. And I still don't understand why they can't just split and do an older Beckett vintage book up to 1989 and then do a separate catalog for the 1990 up. I don't know why that can't be done. Yeah, it's going to cost money. Well, what are you supposed to do? Everything costs money. So, I don't know. But that's an interesting question.
So funny.
I never thought of it, but I really don't get any more, sport publications. In the heyday, I used to subscribe to the Sporting News, Sports Illustrated, Sport Magazine, Inside Sport Magazine. I used to get Football Digest. I read that, religiously, literally up to when they stopped publishing. Yeah. Sporting News doesn't publish anymore. Sport Magazine, closed. Inside Sports closed. The annuals are pretty much gone, with the exception of a few college here and there. It's really it's sad to see. It really is, in my opinion.
Yeah.
But we'll still publish, and again, we should have an enormous amount of subscribers. I don't know what people are waiting for. Why are they not subscribing? And like I said before, privately to a few people, and we talked about this. You'll spend $5,000 on a card, but I don't know if I could do $30 for a year subscription to Gridiron Greats magazine. I got to laugh.
Well, and quite frankly, Gridiron Greats is an amazing deal at that price. I mean, it should be double that, or $50. I mean, considering it's a color publication that's mailed to your home in a package that makes it arrive pristine. So I don't know. Yeah.
I hear you.
You talking about the Beckett made me laugh, just because I remember the first time I saw Beckett magazine. And I'm probably 15 or something like that. I'm like, oh my gosh, there's magazines about football collecting, and I buy it and I go home and I'm laying on the floor in my bedroom and I notice the price guide and I grab my cards and I start pricing my cards out and jotting down on a piece of paper what they're worth, and at the end I end up with like $100, and I'm like, holy moly, not even considering condition of the cards or anything. It just every time I hear the Beckett magazine, it reminds me of that. It's kind of funny.
Yeah, and I remember the good old days in the '80s where every dealer was like had the Beckett literally in front of their eyeballs anytime they were buying anything or selling anything. And I don't know, it's $2 in the book. I can't sell it for under $2 type of thing. And then today, to me, because a lot of things are graded now, they go by whatever that graded price guide is on their phones. And I can't do that. Look, yeah. And I see so many guys show their phones to the prospective customer. No, I gotta get $500 for you. It's a steal at $500. Blah blah blah. And I have no clue what the card is, the manufacturer, even the player in some cases. And why would I spend $500 of my cash on something like that I can't do it.
But Bob, it's the green refractor. It's the green refractor prism card. Come on.
I know. No, actually,
not the black
we had a
bordered,
couple suggestions.
The red bordered.
We had suggestions to introduce different editions of Gridiron Greats magazine. So for like issue 81, there would be one cover, then a second cover, then a third cover. And you would randomly get one of the three covers. And then we figured we would get more people to buy because they would want the other two covers. And I said, I think we would get more irate customers than anything else saying, well, if it's the same information on the inside, why do I need the different covers? And it's a classic, what Street and Smiths did at the end. They came up with all the regional covers, and a lot of people didn't want, whatever. They wanted their favorite team cover. And that, to me, created some demand, it also created some negativity on their part with their customer base. So, Interesting one way. And no, we are not going to go to multiple covers. So I will squash that right now. So no one has to be concerned about that one way or the other.
Is worried about.
But anyways, our special guest is here, and I want to get him on, and I'd like to introduce him at this time. Our guest tonight is a longtime personal friend and sports card and memorabilia collector who actually was a student of mine back in 1988 when we first met. We've remained friends since then and been through many different chapters of collecting. He's a longtime reader of Gridiron Greats magazine, a collector of 1970s and 1980s football card sets, and other assorted sports items and memorabilia. He has, in my opinion, an interesting take on our hobby by his interactions with several longtime collectors over the past few years. He's also a wealth of knowledge and expert and has studied extensively the life and career of former New York Giant, Fordham Rams legend, and Derby, Connecticut high school football coach legend, Lou DeFlippo. He's originally from Derby, Connecticut, and currently resides in Bristol, Connecticut. I'd like to welcome my good friend, Mr. Dan Sacchi, to the show. Dan, well, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Bob, and hello, Joe. Pleasure to meet you.
Hey.
Welcome. Thanks for coming on the show.
Yeah, I've been looking forward to
thanks for coming
on the show. Bob, I just want to I just want to put on I just want to put the perspective on our timeline here. 1988, 2023. That will put us in connection for all or part of 5 decades. 5 decades. So it's quite a tenure. It's quite a tenure that we've had, and our friendship and our connection with one another. It has several layers to it, and and it's been a good ride with you. I'll tell you, it's been a lot of fun. I always find something that we can relate to, and this is just one aspect of it, of our friendship.
Very true. Very true. And I feel really old now when you say parts of 5 decades. So that means I got to be really old now compared to.
Yeah, well, I was actually referred to you by the parents of a childhood friend of mine when I was in my early 20s to help me set up a resume, my very first resume because I needed some really good quality paper, and I stepped into your your business, and it's been all good ever since then. And in the corner, Joe, if you can imagine this, were monster boxes of football cards, and I glanced over at them the first couple times that I went in to see Bob, because I got a purpose here. I'm trying to get my resume done, and I'm trying to move along here with my life, and do the adult thing. And there's my childhood sitting in the corner over there, and I'm like, oh, what is this all about? So finally, I said, what do you collect? And he's like, yeah. So we started going through some things, and it actually, it spurred right at that moment. Within those early days of our friendship, I went back and I pulled everything out that I had, and at the time I was everything was organized by team sets, and I recollated everything I had from 1 to 528,
cool.
with the football sets, and I recollated everything, and I had my number sheet and my needs list, and I was crossing off numbers off my needs list, and I went back to Bob and I said, here's my list, see what you could fill. And he started filling the list, and from the various years, and ever since then, I've been working on a lot of different things, but card collecting and sports memorabilia is one of the things that has kept me grounded since my childhood, and it's always something that I know that I can return to. and returning back to it always gives me a perspective. And I think this is really, really the most important thing about what my perspective is on this, is that, the card collecting has always been a reflection of my personal history and my connection with the world around me, and it evolves over time, and it gives you an opportunity to think about, what were the implications of these particular, artifacts, whether they be cards or memorabilia pieces, and where do they sit within your own personal history and sociology of how you have evolved as a person. And I think that part of it has always been instilled within me, and there are reasons for it, and I hope we get into that, in our conversation.
Well, I got to back up a bit just to fill in a little. Back from 1987 to 1989, I've owned 2 printing companies in my lifetime. The current one right now, Swick Enterprises LLC, just does the magazine. But way back when Dan walked in, I had a little storefront in Wallingford where I did quick printing, I did resumes, I did typesetting and things of that nature. And I had stored a lot of my cards in the store because if I had dead time in between jobs or whatever, I would pull out my cards, I'd sort them or whatever. And in 1989, my lease came up on that store, and it was too expensive for me, and I wasn't getting a lot of walk-in traffic. And at that time, Wallingford ended up having like a half a dozen quick copy centers, and it was competitive for me. And then I was doing typesetting for a 4-color printer in Wallingford, and he said to me, "Why don't you move in with me? I'll sublet you the space in the office, and then it'll save you money. And whatever walk-in traffic you still had, just tell them to come down." And it was across town; it wasn't a big deal. And half of me said, "Yeah, this is what I got to do," and then 49% of me said, "What happens if I converted this to a card shop, a sports memorabilia store?" And I know, Dan, we had that discussion back in 1989, and I just couldn't pull the trigger. I said, "No, I got to keep doing the printing." And wow, what a fatal mistake in a way that I didn't go that route. But at the same time, we can remember, and to fill our audience in, Wallingford really started to boom during the card explosion, and it went from 0 stores to basically 5 stores in a very short period of time, and then contracted down to nothing. Same thing with the quick copy centers, and this is kind of funny. It expanded to 6. I was one of the 6, and then it contracted down to 1, me. And then when I left that store, I just worked out of my house, and I just did it. I did it there until literally till I moved out of Wallingford. But that's a little history on that. But anyways, that's a good introduction as far as how you got interested in collecting, And Dan, point out what you used to get Christmas time from your folks.
Yeah. So my first year of collecting was 1976, and I would have been about 8 or 9 years old, and I, where I live, where I grew up, my childhood in Derby, football was king, and the high school team was really, to be honest with you, as a young child at 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 years old, a lot of those players were heroes of mine, and I was very, very fortunate to grow up in Derby because not only was football a sport that that was well attended, it really became a binding aspect of the community. It really became a social center for the community, and there were thousands of people that would attend Saturday morning games, and my first games I attended, I was 9 months old, and my dad carried me in on my shoulders, and we watched games from, if you're facing from the home side of the field, we would watch games from the right side of the press box, right at the door. My grandfather, my father, and I, 3 generations of us. My uncle, my father's brother, played on the 1969 Derby High School state championship team. And that team is regarded as one of the greatest teams in Connecticut high school history, and regarded as one of the outstanding teams in the New England region. And I know, Bob, you have a perspective on some local players, that came from the New Haven, Reeds area that went on to play professionally.
Right. And again, the Valley area was a hotbed of football. The Soronskis, big football family in the Valley there. Bob Soronsky played for the Packers. A lot of guys were good college players. And as we go on in the show tonight, we're going to talk a little bit about Lou DiFilippo, who was the king of coaching for many, many years in the Valley there. So, I mean, it was a football hotbed, to say the least.
Yeah, so my interest in football, came from that connection with the community, that connection with my family. Derby was a very, very small town. The smallest, had the smallest football program in the state, but it was, it was a program to be reckoned with. And as a child, I would get a box of football cards, at Christmas time, and I would, I would open them up, and I would sort them into team sets, and I would use the checklist. I still have the checklist in my original 76 set. They still have my handprints on it. They still have the ink markings on it that I, that I, applied to them. And it's interesting because I can see just, and this is an example of personal history, and you start to relate to like where you are in your life. Those early sets, the 76, 77 set, and you can start to see slight impressions on the checklist. The checklist in 76 are more runs. So like if I completed a team set, I wouldn't just fill in the box. I would actually run a line along that checklist to show that every card was in my hand. When I get to like 77, 78, 79, those checklists are much more defined within the box. So there's a natural maturity from, say, a young child to adolescence, and you can see like the process of organization, it's there. It's on the cards, as I see them. The cards that are most handled are the ones that I coveted the most, and it's almost a complete 180 from what we see today. The cards that you desire the most, the cards that you desire the most are the least handled. They're the ones that are encapsulated. They're the ones that are graded, and that is that whole evolution has really changed the perspective of what collecting is. And and how that, you know, has really come about is sociologically is very interesting. And the even within the handling of, say, doubles, or, you know, what people call duplicates or dupes, you know, we had numerous games that we would play, you know, with our dupes or, you know, our doubles, at cards that or cards that we had a lesser interest in, even if they were singles. You know, we would play leaners. Right. We would play flips. We would trade. There was never, ever. I mean, of course, you know, at, you know, 7, 8, 9, 10 years old, in the 70s, you know, you didn't have a dollar anyway. You know, as a child, you know, you were concerned, you know, with your childhood, and so even you know, trading, you would,
and we weren't concerned about condition. It's not like we were looking at centering and, you know, et cetera. I mean, I remember trading like 15 cards for an O.J. Simpson, you know, card just because I wanted the O.J.
Exactly. And yeah, and if you have, you know, and if you had the O.J., you were like, well, I could find some of my favorite team. I could find a handful of players that I just became familiar with by watching games on Sunday, you know, and stuff like that.
Yep.
So,
yep.
So that part of it is something that, you know, when I take out my sets and I look at them, and, you know, that it's there, that story is told through the cards. It's not something that, like, oh, I remember when, you know, and you know, when I had these cards, you know, we would do these things and so on and so forth. It's actually there. It's, you know, the edges are dinged. I tell people, I take cards out and I look at them and I said, I had elastic bands all over these. You could see how the edges are. You can see, you know, how they were, you know, how I originally set them up in team sets, and then subsequently, in the late 80s, you know,
my checklists have pencil marks on them.
Yeah, exactly. So,
yeah, that's so funny, because that OJ card, it was a 76 rushing record breaker, and I started collecting in 78. So just seeing a card before 78 was new to me. I mean, I wanted it because I'd never seen a 1976 card, something earlier than, 78. I didn't even know what the Steve Largent rookie card looked like back then, Bob, because 78 was my first. And that's then scary. It was OJ, and it was a 76 card. I just remember, like, come on, man. You know, and finally just a couple more cards, and he gave it to me, and it was beat to crap. It went right into my lunchbox, which had, you know, my thermos with milk leaking in it and stuff. Yeah, it's so funny. I love it. Yeah, I had a smile on my face while you were talking about that stuff, all that, because that's all very, that's burned in my memory too. So Bob and I were talking about this before the show. I've heard this from many, many dealers, that football collectors buy and hoard, whereas baseball collectors will buy, and then when they need something, they will look at what to sell to buy something else. So they're constantly, you know, churning their collection, whereas footballers buy, hold, and then just go work overtime or get money to buy something else. And that I don't know if it's true, but I know that's kind of how my personal collecting habits go. So what else? I mean, you know, between when you started collecting in the 70s and now, other than slabbing, and like you said, they, you know, what else? What are some other differences between then and now?
Well, the sheer number of cards that are, in terms of like sets, you know, that are out there, you know, nowadays, it's mind-boggling. I consider myself to be someone who can, organize things pretty well, in my mind, and quickly, sort through. Oh, this is this, and this is, even with initial, things that I'm not very familiar with. I have a capacity to organize and understand things, very quickly, and it's just mind-boggling to me. I went to a show on Saturday, and you go to a table of say modern or ultra modern cards, and it's virtually impossible for someone to describe to you, well, what is this card? What is the what is the year? What is the set? What is the what is it? And I see countless situations on social media, in person, at card shows, in various other communications, where people who are out there just buying boxes and they are opening packs, they will pull out an insert card or a short print or something of that nature, which is that's what people are looking for. Those types of things did not exist, back during my childhood, and even into the 80s. Maybe the late 80s it started with some insert cards, but they were inserted for every pack. But there are so many different variations of cards nowadays that people don't even know what they are. They're asking, the populace, like, well, what is this? What do I have? What do I have? And it's almost like they're, crying out, I hope it's worth $5,000, Joe, you mentioned about the record breaker set, which was the first, the subset in that 76 set, which is that's the first, the first handful of cards.
I didn't know that. That's cool.
Yeah, it's the first handful of cards in that 76 set, and I think about it now. If I were to, and this is how I relate things, right? So if I were to relate like insert cards of yesteryear to today, I would, and while that a record breaker set of a league leaders subset, the playoff and Super Bowl subset, even team checklists as a subset, they're almost in a little bit of like a tinge of a way, like an insert in a sense, because they're not your player card, they're not your all pro card, so it was, a time when you open those packs. I know myself, when I got the AFC, NFC, and Super Bowl cards, AFC Championship, NFC Championship, and Super Bowl cards, those were, to me, because those were significant markers in history to me, I really enjoyed, having those cards. And, so so that I think is another, interesting aspect. One thing I do want to say that I do think is a positive aspect about cards in particular is the quality of the stock, the card stock itself, beginning in 1989, and the explosion of cards in general, with Upper Deck and Pro Set and even Action Pack. The quality of the card stock continues to improve in a variety of different ways, and so much so they're able to include swatches from uniforms and autographs on cards without them really having a risk to them in transit and things like that, and the print technology is also a very, very important, aspect of card collecting today. I think, and it's so interesting to me that the grading phenomenon has caught on the way it did because if you go and you pick up a box of cards and you open packs from those cards, like to my eye, every one of them is a 10, right? So and that's
right.
And I say 10, and I say 10 hesitantly because in the 80s, not as a child, but during my early adult years, like the condition, like we never talked about grading in a minor sense. We would speak of condition, and we would speak of condition from poor to mint. Poor, excellent, near mint, mint, and the various degrees of conditions in between. And it was an agreed. This is the sociological phenomenon of collecting today. When I looked at a card and another person looked at a card and we were negotiating an exchange, that negotiation was established based upon an agreed understanding of what the condition for that card was. If I thought the card was X mint and another person, looked at it, they would, and they came upon it and said, well, I think this is more, X. I don't really see, the near mint aspect of it. And you point out, a couple little things, the corners, 3 out of the 4 corners are sharp. Maybe there's a little slight, chipping on one corner. So, but the point of it is that the negotiation for a card was an agreed communication between two individuals that actually have the vested interest in that card. And now we have
that grading is subjective. That grading is subjective between people. I mean, you saw it in the wild west of eBay. You still see it with third-party graders, where an 8,
exactly.
If you submit it 10 times, could slide into a 9. Still subjective.
Yeah, exactly. But my point is that it was between the two people that were negotiating for the card.
Good point. Yeah,
and,
gotcha.
Whereas today, there's a third-party, intervention that occurs.
Yeah. Bob and I are constantly making fun of refractors and chromes and emerald edge cards. I mean, Bob, was it Todd Tobias who was saying, when he worked at PSA, they had an entire division whose sole job was to figure out what the hell the card was. And he's like, if only the manufacturer would send us a list of what they're making, we could save so much time. But he's like, even PSA was like, we just need to figure out what the hell they're calling this. It was, chrome. Yeah, it's so weird. Oh, well.
Dan, we're down to 12 minutes, and I want to spend a little time on DiFilippo, so I'm going to hand off to Joe. Joe, let's go to your question now on Lou DiFilippo.
Oh, yeah. I hadn't heard of that. I always love when somebody has a passion about something, and it's something I didn't know about, and I love looking it up. And obviously, Bob mentioned in the preamble, you're from Derby, Connecticut, and Lou DiFilippo was a coach there. Later on, went to the Fordham Rams and the Giants. Tell us how you got interested in that, other than geographically.
Well, Lou DiFilippo was the head football coach at Derby High School from 1968 until 1982, 1983. And, prior to that, if we go back, to the beginning, he attended Hill House High School in New Haven. He was a standout athlete there, was a captain of the football team, and played other sports there while he was there. He went on to play football at Fordham. He was the captain at Fordham, and he was part of the 1941 Fordham team that went to the Cotton Bowl, played Texas A&M, and this was the fifth Cotton Bowl Classic in 1941. And Lou was, at that time, they didn't have like a single most valuable player. They picked two or three players from each team as MVPs, and Lou was one of the MVPs from Fordham, and it was Fordham was ranked 12th in the AP. It was the year following Fordham went to play in the Sugar Bowl, and they won the Sugar Bowl in 1942. So this team was probably a catalyst for that following year. They lost to Texas A&M in the 1941 Cotton Bowl, 13-12. They had both extra points were blocked, and so that was the difference in the game. Lou went on to he was drafted by the New York Giants that year. Yep, he was drafted by the New York Giants that year in the 6th round. He was the 47th pick, and he played for the New York Giants in 1941. And then he, like many others, became part of the military service. And I don't have with me, exactly which branch of service that he served in, but he did serve, during the World War II period, and then he came back and played with the New York Giants, 1945, 1946, and 1947. He had various experiences in coaching following that, and he was a part of several coaching staffs at the NFL level, and in that period of time, in the late 1940s and 1950s, he held assistant positions with Purdue, Fordham, Columbia. He went on coach at the professional level with the Baltimore Colts, and somewhere along that line, he established. I know he and Vince Lombardi had some roles on some of the coaching, somewhere, and I'm still trying to gain a better perspective on that. But specifically, I want to get to his years at Derby. He had 15 years Derby high school football coach. He interviewed for a position in Shelton, which is the next city over, and he was turned down for that position. It was only a coaching position. Then he heard that Derby had a position for coaching and a teaching position available at high school, and when he was offered that position, the story goes that the first question he asked back was, "Do you play Shelton?" So I remember that. Yeah. So his Shelton Derby Thanksgiving Day was one of the longest running traditional games on Thanksgiving, and unfortunately a couple years ago it was that streak had ended. It was over 100 years that the two schools had met. But during his 15-year tenure at Derby High School, Coach DiFilippo recorded a record of 116 wins, 30 losses, and 8 ties. There were 5 teams that went undefeated: the 68, the 69 team, the 72, the 73, and the 75 team. The team finished the team finished first. Was a top-ranked team.
Incredible.
Which was the rankings were designed by the sports writers, by the local sports writers, from the New Haven Register, and I think one of the other papers, but in my region, the New Haven, one was the most coveted one, and they finished twice as a top-ranked team in 1969, 1972, and to really put a stamp and an understanding on Lou DiFilippo as a person and as a man, I really only had one interaction with him as a Pop Warner player, maybe at about 9 years old. He came into the Leo Ryan field house, and he addressed us before one of the games. I want to say it was the Ansonia game, and he said, and he gave us his words of encouragement. But he was really, truly a maker of boys to men, and he was humble, and he did his work with tremendous humility, and I think that is part of his legacy that not only stays with him, but that he carried down to other coaches. The 69 team really gained a lot of people. It garnished a lot of people that went on to other coaching careers as well. Charlie DeCenzo followed him as the football coach at Derby High School. He won state championships with Derby High School. Buster Jadek, who was part of that 69 team, became the wrestling coach. The wrestling team won state championships. And you have to keep in mind that Derby is the smallest city in America. There is, it's in the 6,000-7,000 people range. I
was going to ask what the population was, because you can't have that kind of winning record based on talent alone coming through your high school for 4 years. That's coaching. Yeah. I mean, to have that, I mean, everybody gets that All-American, who, takes them to state, but then that person leaves. That's incredible. That's a 750 win record percentage. Yeah. That's impressive.
Well, and prior to going to becoming a head coach at Derby, he was the head coach at East Meadow High School in Long Island from 1961 to 1968. And in the 7 years, he compiled a 46-9-1 record. They won the league 5 straight years, the league championship from 1963 to 1967, and the Long Island championship in 1964. He also coached lacrosse at East Meadow, and he was the freshman coach at Yale University. And his relationship with Yale University really helped a lot of young men who probably would not have had an opportunity to go to a prestigious school, but were elite athletes, guys like John Pagliaro and Ben Blue, who came out of the Derby program, went to Yale, and John Pagliaro was an absolute superstar. He was part of that 72-73 team. And Bob, maybe another time we can reflect on some of this stuff and draw in some things about Yale. But it was a special time in my life. It was a special. It was a special period in a season in American history. 1976, the year that I started collecting, was a time when America's bicentennial. And being in a small community, all of those aspects of traditions and the values that we hold close to us, we're on display, we're in conversation, and a part of our life, and I think that's what I want people to come away with. I want people to come away with the idea that there are individuals that are tied to your community and to your personal experience within your community that help you understand where we are in relation.
Dan, we might have to cut you off. We're running out of time. We didn't even. My favorite topic.
We're down to 30 seconds.
Stories about Bob
we gotta have
Swick.
you back on. We gotta finish everything.
All right,
else.
Sure.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thanks, Dan. All right, we're completely out of time. We'll be back hopefully next week with another show. Joe, we'll talk again.
We don't run it to the wire very often, but man, he great. I loved him.
Hey there, sports history fan. This is Arnie Chapman, a.k.a. the Football History Dude, and I wanted to thank you for stopping by to listen to another episode here on the Sports History Network. Our podcasters are passionate about uncovering and sharing sports stories from yesteryear. And if you didn't know it already, we have over 30 shows across the network covering all sorts of sports history topics. In fact, here's a glimpse into one of our awesome podcasts here on the network.
Each week, the official Football Learning Academy podcast will take you deep into the history of pro football through interviews with players, coaches, or administrators in the NFL, as well as interviews with Pro Football Hall of Fame selectors, authors, and historians. You'll learn how the game evolved and important moments that shaped the sport into what it is today. And don't miss the Pro Football History Nugget of the Week. Listen to the official Football Learning Academy podcast on the Sports History Network.
How about that? I bet you're super hyped to go listen to that new podcast, right? Well, to learn about this show and all the other podcasts on the network, head over to sportshistorynetwork.com/podcast. Again, that's sportshistorynetwork.com/podcast. Head over there today to find your next favorite sports history podcast.